standout career at Houston, Miami, quick swing through a couple of NFL training camps in New England and Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And the XFL. Now you're joining the staff at SMU.
Yeah.
Was this the plan all along to get into the coaching profession once your playing days were over?
Yeah, I would say so. My dad was a high school coach, so I grew up a coach's kid. He was the defense coordinator for 10 years at St. Paul's High School in Houston. And my playing days, coaches always made a big impact on myself, so I knew one day I wanted to get into it. And when I was in Miami, me and Coach Lashlee, we had those talks, like, hey, when I get done, don't forget about me, and we stayed in good contact throughout the 2 years that we was away from each other, and got a good opportunity, came here.
Your dad was, I guess, your first coach, coached you and your brother.
Yes, sir.
What were some of the things that he taught you, not just about growing up, but about in football, that made you want to follow him into coaching?
Yeah, I think just a game of football, it teaches you so much about life, right? And just me being a little kid in the locker room and seeing how he impacted his players, it kind of made me want to do it at a young age. I always say my whole life I'm gonna be a coach whenever I get done playing, and I think he was the perfect example for me, and I just kind of stayed with it as I got older and older and older, and I'm here now. So
a lot of times when somebody joins a staff, as you mentioned, it's because you have relationships either with the head coach or somebody else on the staff. And coming from Miami, you had Rhett Lashlee, you had Rob Likens, Garrett Justice, Kyle Cooper, Ron Likens. Did they reach out to you and say they had an opening? Did you reach out to them? How did you and SMU get together on this?
Yeah, it was so kind of like my last year. When I hurt my shoulder, I was done for the year, and I was still around the facility, still around Coach Lashlee. And when he found out about this opportunity, he kind of told me to take this job. At that point, I was still trying to decide, am I going to try to play in the NFL or am I going to jump into coaching right away? So he told me, the first year he took this job, that I had a place on his staff. But we talked about it. I decided to try to play as long as I can and stay in contact. And he knew whenever I got done playing that I was going to be calling him. So we just stayed in contact. Even this year to the XFL, we was talking all year, and he was like, "We'll talk again after your season." So I kind of went home. He called me one day. He was like, "Well, the season's over with. What are you going to do?" And I was like, "I'll be there June 1st," and that's kind of how it went. Just relationships.
All right, when you transferred from Houston to Miami, I read a story where it described how Coach Lashlee was involved in the process of recruiting you to Coral Gables. So this is kind of the second time he's recruited you. Is the recruiting sales pitch different when he's trying to bring you in onto the coaching staff compared to when he wanted you to come in and play quarterback?
Yeah, I would say so. He's the same guy, obviously, but it's a different parts of the team, right? I was trying to be his quarterback in Miami, and now I'm on his staff. In Miami, it was more like getting to know him. I know what kind of guy he is now. I've been around him for 3 years now. I tell people all the time, he's like a second dad to me. He treats me like one of his own kids, and I'm just excited to be here now and just learn from him in this aspect of it now.
Did you reach out to any of the guys who are now the assistant coaches, Likens, Justice, the rest, to talk about SMU and what it's like to be part of Coach Lashlee's staff, or was it pretty much a conversation between you and Coach Lashlee?
I talked to all those guys, Coach Brewer, Sam Hollander, Coach Cooper. I stayed in contact with Coach Brewer. We probably talked every week for the last 2 years. So, I knew what it was like last year when they was coaching here, their first year. And even during my XFL season, me and Coach Brewer would talk all the time. He was like, "Man, when you get down here?" And I was like, I don't know yet, Coach Brewer kind of told me what it was before I got here, and it's exactly what I expected.
You've got some former teammates who are now have to look at you as a coach, right? Jalen Knighton, Keyshawn Smith, Romello Brinson.
Yep.
Did you talk to them at all and get a feel for what it's like living in Dallas and being at SMU?
Absolutely. I played with those guys. They were young guys when I played with. They were all freshmen. I definitely talked to them and let them know I was coming down here. I mean, they all was pretty excited. I got a really good relationship with those guys. I talked to them a little bit.
Do they have to call you coach now?
They still call me the Yerig right now, but because I've only been here 3 weeks. But as the year goes on, they might switch. I don't know.
When you first got to Houston, you were initially a receiver. Everybody thinks of you, I guess, as a quarterback, but you came out of Manville High School. You broke Kyler Murray's 6A record with, is this right, 140 touchdown passes?
Yes, sir.
And then you ended up playing both positions at Houston for a little while.
Yeah.
And when you went to New England, you got to look in their camp as a slot receiver.
Yeah.
Does your experience at those multiple positions make you better prepared than some other young guys to start getting into the coaching profession and as an offensive analyst?
Yeah, I would say so. Just playing a position, playing quarterback. So I actually went to U of H as a quarterback, but we had a lot of injuries, so I played receiver. And I think they helped me out a lot, just to learn the game from a receiver's aspect. And now me being an offensive analyst, working with the receivers, I can kind of tell those guys how the quarterback looks at it, how the quarterback sees it, and I think it's helping me a lot. Kind of speeding up the process as far as me learning how to coach like multiple positions, because I did a lot of different positions. So I think it helped.
All right, and just for clarity's sake, you are an offensive analyst, not technically an assistant coach.
Yeah.
What's the difference? What are you not allowed to do that the other guys do, or how does your role differ from the other full-time assistant coaches?
So I don't know all the rules, but I know we can't go in role recruiting as offensive analysts. But as far as coaching the guys like in the meeting rooms and all that, I think we can do everything. I don't know about on the field. I don't think on the field we could actually coach those guys, but like in the meeting rooms or walkthroughs and stuff like that, we kind of help out as the assistant coach. So like, I'm basically the assistant receivers coach now. Okay,
so with Coach Lashlee and Coach Woods, your offensive coordinator, I was going to ask, how much have they broken down what you're going to do, whether you're working with, you said receivers, quarterbacks also?
So I'm working with receivers. I do kind of, I watch film with Preston all the time. I'm around the quarterbacks, but like my position group right now is their receivers, just so we can have kind of a quarterback mindset in that room. So if they have any questions, they come ask me or Coach Likens, whoever it is, and I can kind of tell those guys like how I would see it and how the quarterback probably sees it. So I'm working with the receivers, but I'm also floating around working with the QBs a little bit.
You obviously had a ton of success as a player breaking down opposing defenses. Will you contribute there as well in terms of contributing to the game plan on how to attack certain defenses that SMU sees every week?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably going to be our main jobs as a analyst in GA. We do a lot of behind the scenes work, break down teams, kind of see where they were exposed at in the passing game, running game. That's probably our main job, honestly, in the building, just to kind of get things prepared for Coach Woods and Coach Lashlee and Coach Brewer. The full-time position coaches, they got to worry about so much other things. We kind of try to take as much as we can off their plates.
Your hometown of Manville is, what, 20 miles from Houston?
Yeah, down the street.
So when you left and went to Miami, am I right, was that your first time living outside the state of Texas and away from home?
Yep.
What was that transition like for you? How did you handle being 1,500 miles away from home?
Yeah, so it was my first time living outside the state of Texas. But I would say I was older when I left and went to Miami. So I was in my fifth year at that time. And, I've been around such good guys like Coach Lashlee, Coach Brewer, Coach Light, Coach Justice, Sam. All those guys, they helped me out a lot. So I'd say for me, like, the transition was pretty easy. Just because I was, like I said, I was a little older. And been in the building around good people every single day, it makes it easy.
When you transferred from Houston to Miami, there was a story on ESPN about your transfer. And it described, among other things, that you lost your dad shortly after you transferred over there. And between that and the injury the season before, where you had to sort of help Clayton Tune start taking over the position, or at least get ready to do so, you described, you said something about not having as much fun playing football as you previously had. And you sort of dove back in when you got to Miami. How did you, or Coach Brewer and Coach Lashlee and the rest, help you get that fun and joy back in playing football?
Yeah, so I would say, my last year at Houston, mom had cancer, dad passed away all at the same time, right? So I feel like for me, I wanted a fresh start. And when I got to Miami, that was the only thing that felt normal at the time. So, playing football every day, going to practice, going to meetings felt normal to me. And they kind of made me forget about everything else I was going through outside of football. Having a knee injury, mom getting diagnosed with cancer, dad passing away, moved to a different state, playing football was the only thing that could get my mindset back right. Obviously I was 21 at the time, I was going through a lot. Pricing emotion I'm still dealing with, you know what I mean? So it was tough, but I think the game of football kind of brought everything back in. It was like, hey, for these 2 hours, you can lock in and have fun, forget about the rest of the world. And, whenever you go home and start thinking about that stuff again. So Coach Lashlee and Coach Brewer, they did a really good job of making me feel comfortable. So when I got there, like I said, it was immediately family atmosphere. I was talking to Coach Lashlee, Coach Brewer about stuff that I was going through, how I was feeling, and they made it a point to make sure that I was good when I was out there with those guys.
You've only been on campus here a few weeks, but you know a lot of the guys on the staff, and you're getting to know the players.
Yeah.
But for several years, you were on the opposite sideline.
Yep.
In your short time here, have you learned anything about SMU or about this community that you didn't know when you were wearing a Houston uniform across the field from them?
I can't think of anything that I didn't. I mean, I kind of knew a lot about SMU. I had cousins that played here. Obviously growing up down the street, I watched SMU football forever, playing against those guys. So I know a little bit about them before I got here, but I haven't learned anything new. I'm gonna make it a point to try to learn some new stuff about it.
Have you? Do you have to get rid of all? Would you have taken this job if Houston was still on SMU's schedule?
Absolutely. Coach Lashlee, that's my guy. I mean, he's such a good person. I love all these guys in the building. I think it's more about relationships than anything else. So I'm loyal to Coach Lashlee, loyal to SVU.
How much have you gotten to? Again, you've only been here a short time, but you mentioned, for instance, that you've watched some film with Preston Stone.
Yeah.
When you watch him or Kevin or the other quarterbacks, do you see anyone who reminds you at all of yourself?
Both of those guys are probably more talented than I was, right? But Preston's a good player. I probably would say, Kevin kind of plays similar to how I played when I played. So Kevin probably be the guy that reminds me most of myself.
How is your relationship with Coach Lashlee different now that you're no longer putting on pads and a helmet on Saturdays and you're part of his staff? Does he treat you any differently?
No, he still treats me the same. I mean, he's the boss, obviously. So, but no, it's still the same relationship. I took him home last Friday. Like, we still have the same relationship. We still talk just as much. It's going good so far.
In that ESPN article, you said that part of what appealed to you about going to Miami was, Clayton Tune was the future at Houston, and you said at Miami you really felt wanted, and obviously Coach Lashlee and the rest of the staff were part of that. Do you get that same feeling here that you were really wanted as an addition to this staff?
Yeah, absolutely. This staff is great, from ops to coaching staff to everybody in the building. They really make you feel welcome here. When I first got here, just seeing all my old coaches and guys that I knew that worked with me, Miami, Sam and Likens and Cooper. I mean, they all made me feel really wanted. So it was a good feeling coming here, and just a really great work environment.
You mentioned your dad was your first coach, and he's your dad, obviously, an enormous figure in your life.
Yeah.
Is it hard to resist trying to coach just like your dad and be your own man, your own coach?
I wouldn't say it's hard. It's some stuff that he used to say that I say now to our players, but that's my father. But we were two different type of people. He was rah and did something wrong, get on you. I'm more laid back and talk to you on the side type of guy. So he was that guy, and I'm trying to find my way in this coaching profession. So
a lot of coaches go into a season with like statistical goals. How many touchdowns their quarterback's going to throw, how many sacks a defensive line's going to get.
Yeah.
As an analyst, and again, you've only been here a short time, but do you approach the preparation for the upcoming season with specific goals in mind for what you can add to this staff?
Yeah, I would say I want to be the best analyst that I could possibly be. Whatever any coach needs on the offensive side of the ball, I want to be the guy they go to get it done. So I'm still learning a lot. It's way different from playing. When you play, you go in the meeting and tell you what we're doing today, and that's it. This job is more behind the scenes and breaking down tape and just getting everything ready for the guys. So I just want to be the best I could be. I don't really have any personal goals, but any way to help the team win, any way to make these coaches' life easier. That's what I'm trying to do.
Were you one of those players who got nervous on game days?
I didn't get nervous, no sir.
Because a lot of guys, when they join a new team, whether it's as a freshman just out of high school or in your case maybe transferring, that first game or maybe that first season with a new team can be emotional, can be anxious, can be, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
When SMU opens up the season with Louisiana Tech in a few months, what do you think that emotion is going to be like for you as your first game on the coaching staff?
Yeah, I think it's going to be good energy, right? I'm super excited to be here. The first game is what we all look for in the building, coaches, players. Like all this stuff is great. Off season is pretty good. Fall camp, whatever. Like we want to play games. So I know for me, for most of the players, like we're gonna be super excited to go out there and play, and I'm gonna be right there, just super happy. I know my dad smiling down on me, following in his footsteps. So it's gonna be a pretty surreal moment for me.